Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Chasing Edges podcast. I'm your host, Brian Peters. I can't say enough good things about the human and the monster we have on the podcast today, Rudy Reyes. He's a very decorated Recon Marine, an actor, an author, a conservationist, a man of many hats, and a man of extensive life experience, which we talk about on the podcast, his range and his upbringing, the hardships he had there, and how he used his environment and anything he get his hands on to carve himself into the animal that he was, and eventually became the superhero that he created in his own soul. And we talk about his combat experience, his combat character, his transitioning from that. But the back half of the podcast is absolutely phenomenal, where we start talking about identity, faith, and the respect of suffering, and the respect of a value system to navigate modern society today. Truly elite conversation. He's a truly elite thinker in mind, a very conscious human, and you'll hear that throughout the podcast. But there's a bunch of nuggets in here, and I hope you enjoy. Boom. What's going on in your world, man?
Man, so much. And I've got off camera Jade giving me hand and arm signals. I have no idea what she's talking about. What is it, baby? Okay, great. Man, brother, it's just, health is fantastic.
Yeah, you're glowing, dude, and
Thanks,
yoked as always.
Not too bad, brother. I'm gaining some weight. This is the biggest I've ever been. I think my metabolism is finally slowed. I'm 51. I just turned 51, and I think it's finally slowed down. So now I'm not at the traditional Rudy Reyes 3% body fat. Now I'm around 6. You know what I mean?
I mean, there's arguments all over the place with that. I was reading some research the other day on the fact that, like, really, I mean, I guess you're right at the threshold of it where our metabolism doesn't really slow. Like, we stop moving. And so
I agree with you. That's what it is. The level of activity, Brian, you just freaking nailed it. I was wondering why I've gained some weight. And then I reflect about when I was, for most of my life, I've been between 165 pounds and 175 pounds, occasionally getting up to 180. I was doing so much running and swimming. I was doing so much physical work, just getting information from point A to point B in the field on a timeline. So, brother, my legs, glutes, core were working all the time, running around. And then, of course, competing in sport, competing in endurance work, competing in fighting, and then competing in combat. The level of output was just so immense. No wonder I stayed at 170 pounds, 175 pounds. And now I've got a touch back to it, because now that I'm doing SAS, Who Dares Wins, and now the American version, Special Forces World's Toughest Test, I'm in the field running the selection. So, brother, it's 20-hour days, leading from the front, showing no pain, making it all look effortless, bomb freaking 300-foot rappels through waterfalls, helo casting from helicopters. I am the red man, so I stay in the center and I fight to, if it was up to me, to the death.
Yeah.
Each recruit one after another. Brother, I come out of that process lean again, slender again. And so I finally figured it out. You're exactly right. It's not that metabolism slows down, our activity slows down. And that's what, it's interesting, the name of your pod, the name of your program. And I'm thinking about my edge. I'm thinking about that. And
well, that's like that's where we always start the podcast, and we're just kind of ripping and rolling anyways.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, I mean, where in your world right now are you chasing edges? Like, where are you learning and growing? Like, what excites you? Yeah.
What's so interesting, what is most engaging and frightening and honest, is that this new edge of mine, the new edge for me is facing the coming future not being the most elite athlete. And whoa, like not being the best athlete, not being the best fighter, not being not being the best warfighter because the wear and tear that it took to be that hero in that space for a set amount of time, that wear and tear is now showing up. And B, do you remember when we did, I think we did a Summer Strong, one of the early ones, one of the first ones I went to, and we always have a competition, and I was like a monster.
Yeah.
Even though I was kind of undersized compared to the rest of the power athletes like yourselves, but I was a monster. I was in the running, and I think I was 42, right? About 42.
Yeah, looked 27, but yeah.
Thanks, brother. Thanks, brother. The volume that I had been able to keep up my entire life, I didn't get the bill in the mail yet for the knee, for the arthritis in the wrist, for this strange tendonitis that got into my forearm after a couple of bouts of COVID, probably because I jumped into training so hard because I was so down for 3 weeks. So now, brother, it's a very interesting space knowing that I'm handing off the baton to the younger generation, warrior, athlete, scholars. And now I almost feel in a good way. I feel like an old man in a good way, meaning how am I developing and creating a place and a space and a network for the next generation? I feel that's where I should be. That's where I want to be. I think it's natural for me to be there now, yet I will not give up the ghost. I was at Sorinex yesterday and I did an hour and a half straight of working as hard as I could on the freaking water bag, assault on your soul bike, and jump rope. And I have these little games I play with myself. I don't do rounds. I do songs. And no matter what, as long as the song is going, I'm going 100%. And then like Led Zeppelin comes on, it's a 7-minute long song, and I'm on the assault bike. Oh, bro, I was getting spiritual with it. And that's what I told myself just yesterday, getting spiritual. And I feel a little leaner just from yesterday.
Just the shoulders popping. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you know what I mean? I will not give it up. I will not give it up. However, I am framing, how do I create a legacy and still model vitality for us all as we're getting older? It's a really interesting place that I'm at. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but I think you're also like this really special vessel to do so, because one, you've sustained like I just had Matt Wenning on the podcast, like legendary powerlifter. And so, but he kind of has this recipe for how, like, obviously you want to find like the right person, the smart person doing it, but you also want to find somebody to model after that has stayed at this elite level of performance for a very long time. And like, I did the same thing in the NFL where, okay, like these guys that are 8, 10, 12, 14 years in the league, those aren't accidents. Like they've figured out some type of recipe to
You're exactly right, brother.
have this level of elite performance for a long period of time. And you're exactly
right.
In essence done it for 30 years almost in that realm. And I'm
glad you're talking training. I'm glad you're talking training, because that's one thing I can really speak upon.
Well, that's what I'm hyped to talk to you for the simple sense, because like you're a freak show, and like by freak show I mean like you have this incredible foundation of discipline, work ethic, and everything that shows up. And like I like people like the book The Body Keeps the Score, but I like the literal sense, like the body keeps the score. Like I don't need to know anything about you, but at 51 years old I can look at you and say that guy knows how to work, he has discipline. And you can't go to those dark places in training for that long period of time and not have a spiritual understanding of yourself, the understanding of your dark place, and how to like consistently beat that inner bitch talking, like telling you to be soft again. And so all this stuff shows up, and yeah, you got the bill for that in essence, like over time, but also you've solved this problem for 30 years. And now that's led to this level of wisdom that I think gives you the perfect platform now to, again, share back with the younger generation. And obviously, like I do think like your mindset's elite too. And we'll get into the whole spectrum of you, because
you know what, you're exactly right on. I've got the on the ledger of life. I've got some information, and you're exactly right. I just had my first knee surgery, and I've always naturally just had really robust knees, and I bet you there's a correlation to my middle body size because
Mm.
I'm a middle-sized guy, never that heavy. So there must be a correlation to the wear and tear, um, because I was lighter and I could be explosive, meaning exploding into the ground with the feet, and then add on 10 years of carrying 110, 150, and this is documented on some combat operations. I carried 220 pounds
Good
on my
God.
back.
Yeah.
And that's where and it was just a meniscus, a little thing. I guess I was so robust and so disciplined that I tore it in Fallujah, in a firefight, taking fire, effortlessly jumping off of the roof. And then when I landed, I just felt a little ting, and then ducked my shoulder, rolled out, stayed right in the fight. And I was carrying a slick load, which means battle load. It's only like 70 pounds. Now throw on 70 pounds, dog. You're like,
Yeah.
God, dead. And I used to think I felt like a ballerina with
Yeah.
just my combat load, right? And it didn't flare up till 3 years ago.
Hmm.
Like, I mean, so you're right. Actually, that's a proof of concept that the modalities of training and the approach to training, and the first element, of course, is discipline. Something about what I've been doing is working. And I don't have a slew of doctors. You know what I'm saying? I don't have massage therapists and things like this. How have I, in a very ancient Spartan way, but with a mind of pursuing quantum physics, been able to keep this going? And some of the tendonitis, it's because I love using these grips. You see, I'm always doing ring work, and I'm always gripping. I'm always using my hands. Probably, from some injuries, I'd cut off my finger and had it reattached, this pinky, and that's why it doesn't bend. So I've made adaptations. I've got this like certain a muscle right here in the elbow and forearm due to just using this first digit. However, over an immensity of life, these discrepancies show up. But you brought up a great concept. They're just information on my ledger. What am I going to do with that information? So I've changed up some of my training, brother. Um, uh, Man, if I thought about what I was going to give the secret about what I do every other day, which is the mainstay of my workout. Every other day, this is what I do. Probably from using fists, from fighting and martial art and gripping so much, when my wrists don't do really well when they're just flat like this, probably due to the overdevelopment of forearm muscle and so much impact that I put on the wrists. So when I do push-ups, any kind of pressing, I make sure the hand is in an ergonomic position. So this is my recipe, brother. So the Tabata protocol is traditionally 20 seconds on, 10 seconds off, body weight exercise, something that you can do volume, right?
Yeah.
And for 8 rounds. Just in case maybe Tabata was taking it easy, I add 30 seconds on, 10 seconds off. So first of all, I do 30 seconds on, 10 seconds off, 8 rounds. And it starts with, I put dumbbells on the deck because when I put my hands on the weight part of these hexagon rubber cheap dumbbells, my hands are relaxed.
Yeah.
8 rounds of Hindu push-ups with rad music. 8 rounds. And around 6 or 7, I'm getting really fatigued, but now really, really coming up high at the final push. Somebody asked me what I do for triceps. I never do tricep work except this quantum big stuff. Also, when you shift your hips back and your feet are splayed, you are stretching hams and glutes at the rear of the exercise and extending spine. Now, as you're dipping down, you're getting spinal flexion. And at the final push up, I'm getting some release in the hip flexors and the psoas. And by doing that continuously in this circle, it's opening up the body, and I'm getting some great chest, shoulder, tricep development. Then I resist the urge to collapse, and I stand and start walking, listening to my music. And then I set up for my next Tabata, which is a push-up knee tuck, 8 rounds. Now, chest, shoulders, upper body is pre-fatigued. So I'm utilizing a lot of abdominal work to support this movement. But then I think, no, I want to keep pushing with that chest. Now I get quantum with that. After that, I listen to music. I walk around a little bit more. The next Tabata is straight up push-ups. Now, I used to believe if you did push-ups from your knees, then you've quit. I found myself doing Tabata on my push-ups, fatigued, and now core and balance is breaking a little bit, and I'm taking some rest at the top, but trying to grind out a few more. It's always by round 2 or 3, because the first round I do 30, wham, 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 wham. Second round I'm doing 15. Third round I'm getting 5. So I dropped to my knees. This only started about a year ago, and then kept the volume up. Holy smokes, I was feeling new things happening. And then the next round, I'm able to get up to full position for push-up position, so on and so forth. So now I've done 3 Tabatas. Now the last one is mountain climber. All of this is pre-fatigued. I'm having to stabilize, and I'm getting spiritual now because legs are getting blown out. And I put socks on, so I'm not jumping with it. I'm sliding and thinking about my relationship of pushing on the deck with the toe the entire time. Almost like I'm pushing the world away from with my legs, with my toes. After those 4 are done, it's 25, 30 minutes. I am freaking, whoa. And then I'll get into some strength. And that will be a pull-up, a ring, muscle up, a dumbbell, clean, strict squat thruster. Now my workout's about 45 minutes long. I'm really blasted, and then I'll do a little bit of tools, shadow boxing, and I have a great standalone heavy bag now that I just got, and work tools. That gets me so there, gets me there. Sometimes I only train every other day. Other times, the next day, I will just do volume work, like sprint work at 70%, warm up to 70, start at 40. Start with skip drills first, warm up from 40 to 70, and then do intervals, and then cut back my recovery time between those intervals. And then when I go to the Disneyland of strength, when I go to Sorenex HQ, it's got everything for me. So I utilize the AstroTurf. I utilize the uppercut bag. I utilize the Salt on Your Soul bike. I utilize that rusty, creaky ass freaking Versa climber outside in the back.
Yeah.
And so basically I'm going through Dante's Inferno to get to heaven.
Yeah.
And that's my approach, brother. And I guess it's working.
Well, it's beautiful. But it's beautiful. And like, so, I mean, like, there's so many ways we can approach that. One, just the intuitive nature of your training is awesome. Like the movement pattern of the first Tabata, like keeping, again,
yes.
you go back through like spine mobility, you're keeping the front of the body open on top of developing all this hypertrophy strength. So like, it's very efficient way to train. And we're talking body weight stuff.
Mostly body weight these days, brother.
Yeah. And like, and I think people sleep on that, particularly like, again, as what you can say, age, time become a factor, or people just find excuses that, oh, I don't have the gym equipment, whatever it ends up being. Because again, like, there's not a lot of people, and I'm not going to keep saying your age, because like, I think age is kind of trash, and that is just another excuse. Because you've been able to do it for so long, and you've prioritized it, and like, you have, again, a million other things on your plate, but you've obviously made this a priority. And not only, again, it's not even like an attendance equals achievement thing. Like, you're going there to slay the beast. Like, yes. You're going there to tackle that demon. And like, so I guess, because the training, awesome. But the consistency over a lifetime, I think, obviously shows up in this category, because it's a habit. And it's also a habit that you've like whether I think you know it in general, but it's a very adaptable habit, like the movement patterns, but also
everywhere in the world, I use the same thing, brother.
yeah,
I'm in a hotel in Taiwan. I am in the jungle of Vietnam. I am in the desert of Jordan. No matter where I'm at, there is no, man, it's so interesting. So every time I drive by someplace or walk by a place and it's a hand railing that's at a 90 degrees, for 35 years, I have used those as my dip station.
yeah,
So when I was a kid and right after I got out of the boys' home, there was no, I didn't have any equipment. I had nothing. I had what was around me. I learned to find things in the environment to carve and create myself. So brother, I've learned like, the thing in the hotel room that you open up so you can put your luggage on.
yeah,
I use that thing for, I'll put my feet up on the table, bring my hips high, and I'll dip down low. So I'm hitting some high chest on that. So there's ways, brother. The body is the gym, my man.
yeah,
And I know it's not glamorous. And I think maybe that's why us in the first world eschew the ancient calisthenics, because it's not glamorous. And by the way, it doesn't impress your friends, because when you're doing it, it's not impressive because they don't know how freaking hard you're working. And it's not obvious because they don't see the load on the bar or the sled. But brother, obviously it's a gem. It's a gem to put in your toolbox for sure.
yeah. And I mean, the body keeps the score. Like, look what physique you've been able to maintain. Obviously,
Yeah.
you're trying to experiment in different things, but just to rewind, because I really like like the go by song concept, because it makes you again like I look at competition as like this multivariable field that you'll never be able to predict. So just inserting that into your training, because you never know how long some fights are going to take. Some are
You're
one punch,
exactly right.
and
You're
so
exactly right.
and so you're training to be incredibly adaptable, capable, and so but you're at the whim of the next song on the shuffle.
Yes.
And I like that. So and so, but it's glorious. I think it's a really cool thing, because we get so rigid and, oh, I got to follow my sheet.
Yes.
And so like building those things in, and then the transition I wanted to make, just because we've talked about it before, but I hear you starting isolating muscles like in different movement patterns. You're very conscious and intentional with what's firing when. And another and you were I can't remember how many days notice you did the marathon on.
I did. I showed up 10 minutes before the race and got my tennis shoes.
Yeah.
I got a week notice. I hadn't done distance in probably 5 years. And I did it 3 hours and 55 minutes. I guess to the hardest marathon there is, the Boston Marathon.
Yeah. but and like obviously, like even in what we're talking about, like some people may think we'll call it crazy. I think crazy and obsessed are words that are just thrown around by the lazy and undisciplined.
Well said.
And
or the fearful.
Yeah, and they're really just scared of their own potential, and like it's more of a shame that comes out in a form of we'll call it hate, but besides the point.
Sure.
But like those are my favorite humans, because they're the extremists, or the people that are chasing edges in their life. They want to know what their potential is. They want enough experience, or they want to share and give back enough of what they've learned. And like that's another edge. Or like they want to learn how to love deeper in a relationship. Like that's another edge. Like that's like life is this curiosity for a deeper, more meaningful experience in my world. So it's just
absolutely, brother. You're nailing it, brother. That's it. We are still, even in our skill set and our ability, and we're always, you and I are always the strongest, most powerful dude in the room, unless we're at Summer Strong.
Yeah.
But we're right there. We're in the running.
Yeah.
All around. We are adjusting and questioning our identity every day, because we are in the training hall of the mind, of the soul. Whether it's whether the training hall is physically manifested with a gym and equipment, or a combine, or it's just us alone. We are in the training hall, and we are sometimes with trepidation, because we know we're going to go into a place that we may never have been before. And this is daily. When no one's watching, I mean, this is a very intimate journey, and we are questioning our identity and um, adapting our identity every day. If that's not the most courageous edge there is, I don't know what is.
That's I fucking love that. It's because and it's showed up on the podcast recently in really cool ways that I like to talk about, because I talk about this with guys I coach and just people in my circle in general, where I've had an Olympian on where she talks about life as all these little let goes of your identity, instead of like building up this massive identity of, again, special operator or NFL player, when really like your whole life is a transition. It's whether it's from daughter to mother to grandmother, or this title, like life. And then Brian McKenzie got on here and dropped some knowledge on me where he said, you can never, it's an impossibility to identify with something that can change. And then which I was like, boom, lights. And then how I like approach it and how I worked with my transition. We had a really cool talk, like whether you knew it or not, you had a big impact on my transition because of a talk at Summer Strong. But I identify, like I teach guys to identify with their capability. And what you just articulated, like the questioning of your identity constantly in this training practice and this training mindset of life is I think very similar, because guys, again, struggle with identity. Everybody puts like their resume together, and like, so you're identifying with these titles your entire life. And then one of my other favorite approaches to it is Anthony DeMello, where it's like you don't like, you don't go to the restaurant to eat the menu. Like you go to experience the human. And so I can tell you, Brian Peters, performance coach, NFL player, Northwestern grad, whatever, like that's the menu. That's not me. Mine's my capability and my experience, and what you're talking about in the world of capability for adaptation and to go and compete and battle a world that is the world of the unknown, because you don't know what's coming on. There's so many variables and different humans and perspectives that the only way I can defend my soul is to be incredibly capable in the violence world and the peace world and everywhere in between, so that, again, my training reflects my capability, which is my identity, not the I'm Rudy Reyes, like get locked into the Marine Corps, like or
not the resume, not the menu.
Yeah.
Those are very static definitions of a quantum experience. I'm with you, brother. I'm on that freaking edge right now. I've never been in this place. Brother, I've got some financial stability. I've been with the same woman for almost 5 years, and it's incredible. I have a dog. I have 2 cats. The love of my life is this little female cat named Pants. And I have some big work ahead that's affecting millions of people. I've never been in a place in which I care so much about the limited number of days I have left on the planet. I think when I was, even when we first met, and you've got to know quite a few of us operator brothers. And if you remember us, 5-7 years ago, we were still very, as a whole, unafraid of death, possibly even angry at the possibility. So we were pushing ourselves physically, mentally, spiritually, and then oftentimes in the negative way, to basically to give the middle finger to our mortality, which also means a little bit of a middle finger to our responsibility. And I think that's from the extremities that we've been in, and the moral, physical, spiritual, psycho emotional extremities. doing hard stuff and then having to compartmentalize any emotional attachment to it. And after a while, um, with your left and right lateral limits, it'd be like when you're playing football, brother, and 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 it's a mile between each sideline, you know. Um, and then when somebody tells you to go forward, you're like, well, what forward do you want? I mean, it's a mile that way and a mile that way. I can go any forward I want now. And it can create a pathos and it can create pain. Um, I was there for some time. And I was one of the good ones. Like you talk to the brothers that knew me as a war fighter and before, I was one of the very good ones, meaning I had a clear definition of morality and ethics and character. Um, when I took prisoners, immediately when I could see, imagine, you're seeing another fellow human being that you've just destroyed his freaking comrades and may have wounded him. And the moment you take control of him and you have him, uh, 5 S's and a T, and he's secured, I recognized the pure fear in that man's eyes and that I was in total control. And I could not help but have empathy and compassion. I could not help it. I was that guy. But over time, and probably being in, Fallujah and Ramadi, which was so bloody and dangerous, and even that started going away because I did not even have the emotional space to do that, not anymore. And there were after effects of that, and then imagine the hubris that comes from coming out of Afghanistan and Pakistan, Iraq, and over, and coming out still looking like a Greek god, almost laughing at death, and yet intimately knowing how real it is. It can skew you, and I think we've had a lot of hurt that's manifested in drug abuse, and then suicide. And I was very close. I was struggling, and I started drinking at 37. I never drank alcohol in my life till 37 years old, and then immediately got into hard drugs, pushing myself because I was angry at myself, and then laying waste to everything around me, and and then suicide. I lost the ability to see my son because I was probably dangerous. The truth is, at the time, I didn't see it. Um, and I was right there. And by the grace of God, and I would also have to say it, the discipline of training, even when I was on the edge, I was still training all the time. And at least for that one moment, I was being honest and truthful with myself. And and then I just felt a voice when I had my pistol in my hand, and then right there, I just said, I'm turning it around. That's simple. I said, I'm turning it around. And Force Blue, I created Force Blue. Next thing you know, I'm working again. I'm brought in also into the family of strength. Interesting, the parallels, because I thought that it was just us war fighters. I found all our NFL and powerlifter and all Olympian sports people were all going through the same thing because they've been at that edge and they push boundaries that most people can't relate to. And we found ourselves together. And then I met my woman, and then the culmination of the discipline and the work. I had done a project in the UK. It was called Once Upon a Time in Iraq. It was a documentary. And I worked on it for over 3 years and forgot about it. Like we do our training. I mean, in some ways we can remember every single freaking rep and every freaking day. And other times it just floats by because it's just who we are. It won the Oscar in the UK. And then the SAS called me 2 years ago. And brother, since then, um, rocket ship. And so I really believe that I am here and that God has graced me through everything to be of testimony, and to shine a light for all of us. And that means first shining a light for me. And that's that pushing the edge and addressing identity on a daily basis. It's been absolutely wonderful. I've never been better in my life.
Dude, that's I mean, that's so incredible in so many different ways in that realm. Just like, I like the idea of testimony in general, and even how it shows up in the Bible, but the ability to, again, have the awareness to, again, it's basically like you can't pour from an empty cup, like to maintain the testimony and the identity in self, and then like prioritize sharing and inspiring and doing X, Y, and Z in all different categories. So I think that's really special, because I also, one of my kind of mottos that keeps me giving back in different categories is that like help and support are not yours to keep.
Well said.
And so in that capacity, like you always need to help yourself, and you always need to prioritize that. But then realizing the span of a lifetime, how many people have helped and supported you. And you come across some people where if they become stagnant because they've kept all this help, and they've kept things, so that there's an imbalance in their soul where they think, in essence, like it's not this free flowing of energy person to person, when really like that's how we feed each other. And again, it can be in words, it can be in energy, it can be in physical touch, it can be in all these things. And I just think that's really, really special, meeting humans that, again, have the ability to give and take, and then have been to dark places and can share that and give that testimony. Because like that, like, again, like we don't have to rehash any of your story, but when I was like, I happened to be at Summer Strong, like after I knew I was done playing football and wasn't in a good place. And and your analogy, the sidelines were a mile away, and I wasn't I was fearful of that. I wasn't excited and curious about even like getting closer to a sideline.
Sure.
Like I didn't,
I'm with you, brother. I'm with you.
The weight of that freedom, like, because like I was in a financial place to, like, I should be incredibly grateful and curious about these things, but the weight of the freedom was just like, it was still an identity that I haven't even approached my identity outside of football.
I'm with you, brother.
Yeah. So in that realm, like, you were really helpful in like giving testimony to your story up to that point. And so that's like my respect for you's been there from the jump, just seeing,
brother,
again,
we hit it off like peas and carrots from jump, brother. I know.
But I think it is really cool, your journey in essence, as far as like, because what I saw initially was this multidimensional human, obviously capable of savagery training. I knew a little bit about your history on deployments and that kind of thing, but then you had the ability, because I was talking breath, we were talking breath at the time.
That's right.
And you immediately made the breath spiritual. And so you have a spectrum of not just like violence, but peace. And obviously those type of humans always intrigue me in general. But where, as far as your journey, where did that again,
you know what,
balance of spectrum show up?
Yeah, that joy. I think I heard Dr. Jordan Peterson express something about joy, that joy can even live outside of happiness, because it's so profound. And it's so enlightening and buoying of spirit. When we're suffering or we've had a loss, whether on the gridiron or a family member, or in an opportunity that you really were counting on, a joy that we are still standing upright, that we still have the ability to look at the sky, and that we're breathing the spirit ourselves. It's a state of joy. And it's interesting, as I've gotten older, I just saw my mother for the first time in 20 years. And I come from an extremely damaged background. I'm listening to Dr. Peterson express about elements it takes to create an able child, in which the child will have tools to navigate this thing called life. Because it's a full contact sport, brother. Life is full contact, dog. And I think back to my childhood. Do you know, my man, when I was in 7th grade, and I'd been probably to 10 different schools by then, shuffled around to different people, and then foster care right before the boys' home. I didn't know why. It's probably because I was so sick. I had hepatitis, from living in garbage and malnutrition. So I also had really bad ringworm all over me. And, I was not really educated at that time about the immune system and such. All my brothers and I, we all had lice and worms too. So we were really attrited, really, really attrited. Brother, I lived to read and reread my X-Men comics, and something about the X-Men, about these band of misfits that everybody looks down on and are on the edge of society, are still saving the world. And I would go across the street to this shabby freaking park. We lived in this heavy drug infested joint down in Corpus Christi, and one of the walls to our house was missing. I mean, it was rough, man. I would do my pull-ups and my dips and train, and I would look at Spider-Man and Wolverine and my X-Men and my Spidey. Those were my two favorite comics. And I would look at their moves and I would try to imitate them. Very, very sick. And I always smelled garbage because I had sepsis. It did not deter me. Through this art and through the ability and through the gift that we're still standing and we're still able to move, I was in love with joy, and I was pushing myself towards it. And brother, when I got to the boys' home and I got antibiotics and some new teeth and a haircut and some church clothes and 3 square meals a day and all the snacks I wanted to eat, because we do have to take care of the lawn, the kitchen. We run the boys' home. We work, and I'm able to eat. And if my grades are good, I can freaking be on the wrestling mat and compete. Holy smokes, I exploded, brother. I was the strongest kid by far in multiple weight classes above me. The robust skeleton and muscles just started blooming. And I've just never looked back. I've just never looked back, brother. And just always that state of grace, And I think back. So sometimes I have tough times now with the finance or with an injury, and I still have to go perform in the jungle for 2 months in Vietnam, or I've got to say goodbye to Jade, and she gets emotional because she's not used to my deployments like they used to be. And then of course some of my family members that are haters because they think I'm too good for them, all this type of stuff. I revert back and I think about that 7th grader, that super stud with no teeth and a rotted infection, ringworm all over himself. I had to cut my own hair, look like a freaking complete nerd. And I wore my cousin's 2 size too big freaking shoes because that's all I had. And I still went across the street to do my pull-ups and dips. I think back to that freaking hero, and then it makes everything pretty easy. You know what I mean?
Yeah, dude. And that's magic in the sense that, like, I love the personal narrative, like the hero's journey in general.
For sure. Oh,
And
yeah. Joseph Campbell, brother, he hit it. It's right
yeah.
on the money. It's the truth.
And it's and the cool thing is that you emulated the heroes, but also you've been to, like, again, I like it's not Angela Duckworth, but the book Grit. I haven't read it for a while, but a lot of people's fortitude and grit can be measured back to like some of their childhood, and in essence, like their hardships as a child. And like, obviously you still revisit that, which is powerful, but also going from that, again, that 7th grader, that ringworm infested 7th grader, to literally a superhero. And like, I've heard some of the boys tell some of your war stories and that kind of thing, and it literally sounds like a modern day Rambo.
Brother, I had completely embraced the archetype, and I allowed nothing else but that. And that's why I was so successful in that realm. Interesting enough, due to my obsession of manhood, it stunted me in other areas eventually when I was out of that community and space. And it took me about 10 years. And that may be a testament to why focused training and focused ambition is so important in our youth. and why mentors are equally as important, because one day when you're off the gridiron, one day when I no longer am carrying a rifle for work, we're going to need the mentorship / maturity to now pick up the things that we've left to the side for some time. And I think that is the most healthy progression for men. I can only speak for men because I'm a man. To be fully actualized, we must have that decades long investment and direction in one thing. And sure, some other parts of us may not be integrated, but with excellence, you will attract the old King Leonidases, the old mentors that have been there through the same journey, and help you pick up those things to be well-rounded as we move into our middle age and older age.
Yeah, and the cool underlying theme there, even through your roller coaster of a life, is this discipline of training. And
that's first and foremost, brother.
And I think that that does get lost, because I don't want to attack the whole system, but like participation in sports is down, things like that, when really, like, I think the weight room is one of the best teachers on the planet. I think then obviously, like, I think fatigue is like what makes some of the like obviously, what's the saying? Fatigue makes cowards of us all.
Of us all. That's right.
Men in good condition have more courage to spare, and that
well said.
In that category, like we need more courageous men at this time. And I think, like, I truly believe that training is something that every human should adopt to know their own potential, but also to understand that, like, I can face fatigue, like I'm saying mental, spiritual, emotional, and physical fatigue, and still push forward with these value systems that have been instilled since Leonidas. Like, old problems have old solutions. Like the Socrates was complaining about how bad kids are these days, same as we are. And so, like, this is not a new problem, but it still deserves the same amount of courageous respect and courageous mentorship for our youth to keep the boat going in the right direction. That's
right, brother. I'm new in the faith. I believed and was taught, because when I'm Mexican American, we're Catholics, and so I went to mass when I was little, but I had a good life till about 7 years old, and read all the Bible stories. We used to have little books of Bible stories, and then on TV when Moses would come on, and there was a mini series back in the 70s called The Bible, and it was like a 5-day mini series. And then I think through the very difficult time in my childhood and then adolescence, I remember praying for help, and I didn't see it come in the form that I thought it would come. So I started just counting on myself, and I got heavy into Zen Buddhism. And Zen Buddhism is an incredible practice. The thing that's slightly different about Buddha and Zen Buddhism and Christianity is, I believe, because the Zen Buddhism came out of India and then really flourished in China and then Japan and other places in the Far East. They had such an extreme caste system that no matter what your intelligence or your talents and capabilities are, you can only go so far. So they really focused on breaking down limitations of value systems so that you can break down value system of what is good and bad, I believe, possibly from my own experience, so that people that are stuck forever in poverty can somehow alleviate the pain of being poor and being slaves, okay? And it's incredibly valuable, this tool, this Zen Buddhism. And I absolutely adore the Dalai Lama and my Shaolin monks. Also, Shaolin Kung Fu is what really got me into it, because they're fighting monks. They're fighting monks. They fight to defend. It was a beautiful mixture of putting pain aside from my impoverished upbringing and the fear I had of this modern new world. Like, look, I have a nice suburban house now and stuff like this. I never had any experience with that. So it was fearful to me. I had no idea even how to dream of something like this kind of stability. And therefore I just chose, I chose to not even think about it, because I didn't even know how to approach the journey on that. Um, the, and then in Christianity, what's interesting, so many of the precepts are the same. But the quantum leap from that Jesus Christ comes and says, I will stand for what is right, and this is what is right, and this is what, and I will not stand for what is wrong. And I am sacrificing myself. Actually, it's the greatest thing that I can do for you. And it's something that cannot be denied. So please, brother, accept these values, because you know it to be true, because I'm willing to die in the worst way for you. It puts a line in the sand. It puts a flag on the beach. And in this wild ass world, we must have a clear-cut value system, and those left and right lateral limits, your freaking sidelines, need to be clearly defined if you want to go forward. And forward is the only way. This has been a quantum leap for me. 2 years, Jade's been in the faith, so she's been talking to me since we've been together. And at first it was too hard. Also, maybe the idea of me praying for help was too much for me, because I was afraid of being let down. It's interesting. I look back now, I realize that God and Jesus has guided me and protected me and saved me every day. The bullets going by my head, the RPGs flying this way, everything was a miracle. Everything is a miracle that I'm here. And now I embrace the faith, because there is no gray area. The only gray area is in me. And that is what I must work out.
And I think that's incredibly profound. And I like when it gets into the faith talk, I think Dr. Peterson does a phenomenal job.
He does. He's
directing
intelligent.
traffic.
Yeah, I'm a bit of an intellect, brother, even though I have no college and such. I'm a bit of an intellect. And so he really was the person that was able to articulate to me. And I started framing things a little differently. And now I can't help but see the faith in everything and in everyone. I can't help but see it. It's there.
And one of the coolest, and you articulated it really well with understanding the flag on the beach concept and understanding the boundaries and the gray area, is in essence, like you're not going to get what you don't aim at. And in that realm, like if you don't have a value system with clear-cut boundaries, or even we'll take this even to goals, like if you don't really truly aim at a goal of being a great person, of being like somebody of faith, being this disciplined human, then if you don't have a goal and you don't aim at something, this gray area, it gets really easy, because now you don't know if you're winning or losing, you're succeeding or failing, and it's really easy to just drift through the world and get by and do all these things, when really, when you have rigid boundaries and not a rigid faith, but an understanding of your own faith and value system, now you can again move towards the goal. And the goal is obviously personal growth, and also righteousness, to be Christ-like.
Righteousness and personal, don't forget personal power.
Yeah, and that's where
personal power. I know a lot of people in this it seems in our first world now, in the UK and the USA now, almost a socialist communist, and not in the definition. When I used to think communism means everybody cares for each other and takes care of each other. No, the human experience is not designed in this way. When we look around, the grass itself fights the weeds to get to the sun. Every animal in nature must predate or run from predators. It is always a struggle to have children in the natural world. It is apparent that we must struggle, and we will. How about this? We will struggle. You don't even got to try to struggle. You will struggle. When we speak about personal power, there's a narcissism and a hubris that people project that have not garnered personal power themselves. And the other side is those that have made it big time, like you said earlier, they now want to hoard it. And that is a danger. However, that should not deter us from going forward and achieving the personal power. That is how we make more change. I think there was some time in my life where I didn't think I was worthy of that. And maybe because my left and right lateral limits were not clearly defined, it's easy to be lost in the fog. And still, as long as you show up strong and fit and you make a little bit of money and have a hot girlfriend or a freaking a beautiful ex-wife, people think you're making it. No, man, that's not it. Those are just images. And if you're just projecting images to pretend that you somehow have personal power, it's just not real. It's false. We must develop our personal power, and I'm not afraid to say it.
Yeah, and that's I think again, obviously that's powerful in and of itself. And
you know what I'm saying, don't you,
yeah,
brother? You really
yeah,
feel what I'm saying.
Yeah, and it's a fine little line where
It is a razor's edge.
But you can't, it's unmistakable. Like when you see somebody that has the personal power, but without the hubris, or in that realm where or they understand the relationship between, like with suffering, where
yes,
I think it's another Jordan Peterson line, but you're going to suffer whether you choose to or choose not to do these things.
That's right.
And you have to decide like what poison you're going to drink. And
that's right.
And in the logical sense of somebody that has a faithful flag on the beach, or a guiding light, or a lighthouse, and that kind of thing, that's the choice to suffer towards being this, again, righteous human, this example and mentor, as opposed to being this hoarding, hubris led human. And so I think like that respect, and because like again, like everything, like life is suffering, like you said, the chaos of life so many times on already, and like I completely see this world as chaos, and that's why I like Dr. Peterson's approach to chaos and understanding how to balance that. And so in essence, like that's why you have to have personal order, and said another way, is personal power. And your personal power needs to be capable. And my world, I call it the killer monk. So I like that you brought up the shaman Mike.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like I want to be this person that's capable. And then obviously like this capability is going to breed confidence and competence in all scenarios, where I can always be this, again, the suffering for the right reasons, sharing, giving, loving, etc. And I think that's always going to be the righteous endeavor and a worthwhile endeavor in life. And it makes the most sense. And I think you embody it really well, just again, with the conversations we've had. But it's also, I just think, I think people need to like think, meditate, journal, all these things on their values, and get some clarity, because a lot of the like perspective in our human experience is so subjective day to day, and reacting with the environment, where we got to keep track and understand where we got to aim at something, we got to track and know where on the path in relation to the boundaries we are, so that we can adjust the ship accordingly. There's
this kind of deconstructionalist, postmodernistic approach that's really taken hold in the last 100 years, especially in the last 20, 40 years in this country, and of course in Europe. Why? Because we're so successful. We're so successful financially that even our poor or homeless have freaking smartphones. Don't get me started. I have no compassion or sympathy for anyone in this country that tells me they're having a hard time of it. I don't care who you are. I've been in too many very difficult places, and I've worked with people fighting and struggling for sovereignty and for a school to send their children to. I was just in Vietnam in the jungles, and brother, the 50, 60-year-old women that are 4'5" are still pulling the water buffalo and carrying the rice on their backs. And yet, when I saw the little kids zooming around, this tiny girl, probably 7 years old, had an adult bicycle, and she had to freaking wear these big ass shoes to reach the pedals, not even on the seat. Her freaking butt's on the damn bar. And she's zooming around on this bicycle, the happiest child ever. I bet you there's no ADHD out there. They ain't no dang, whatever the heck, brother. Those people were so filled with the zest of life just to make a little bit more money because they're starting to break out of some communism and get some capitalism and financial opportunity leads to education. Education leads to pushing the boundaries of what's capable for the individual outside of survival and then into a space of thriving. I've been to too many and been a part of too many things to make excuses for anybody. And this strange deconstructionalist attitude in which we want to dismantle and be a naysayer to tried and true God-written principles. It's folly and it's damaging us. I'm Mexican American, and I grew up just hearing a little bit about politics and economics that Republicans and conservatives were evil white people that are rich and hold Mexicans and blacks and other races down, and that Democrats care about people and care about education. Well, I was in a completely welfare freaking oriented society. No personal responsibility. My mother and my father had no personal responsibility for us. So they just took the welfare, and actually they just did drugs or did whatever they wanted to do. And it was always somebody holding them down. And we all have been born with gifts that we did not deserve. And we all have pains and traumas that, we've all have gifts that we did not earn, and we all have pain and trauma that we didn't deserve. All of us on this planet. No place in the world is better than the United States of America for any human being that wants to make more of their lives. And I just feel compelled to speak about this because I'm seeing so much victimization and this idea that my personal identity and my emotions, which by the way changed in and out all the time, are what is most important in society and in truth. And that's not the case. My Kung Fu teacher told me a long time ago, whenever I punch or kick, I say, sa, sa, it means die in Cantonese. He says, because emotions, they have energy. He says, but you only use it in your competition because emotions are the most powerful thing people have, but they're the most uncontrollable. So why are we living in a society in which how we feel is the most important thing? When I see now that even our English language and history is being attacked and deconstructed, by who? Have these people that are critique and naysayers and haters, have these people built a thing? They've not. Brian, think about all those minds and warrior studs that built the idea of football. Like, even, you know what? Yeah. Think about what these freaking men and their women, 150 years ago, first thinking about it. What it came out of wrestling, and it came out of track and field, and let's do a mini combat war utilizing air assets and ground assets against each other. And then think about all the different races of people that kind of put it together. Some didn't speak English, some were probably Lithuanian and Polish and German, of course, and then we got these freaking super stud black athletes too, and they're creating a game, and then they're creating not just a game for fun, and then for strength, and then it goes into college, and then the NFL, and now this is something created. I have no patience for anybody that critiques. They need to spend more time creating.
Yeah, the man in the arena concept. Yeah,
people really need to think about that. What have they created? We've both been gifted so much. Yeah. We were born here in America. We were a baseline of education in which we could read and write. by 5, 6, 7 years old. A lot of the world, just 100 years ago, 2/3 of the population of the world was illiterate. Just 100 years ago, we were blessed, and then we were given some Spartan training. We were had the ability to watch movies with Stallone, and we're like, wow, this is possible. We had the ability to work and make enough money to get our cool new freaking cleats for our training. We have the environment in which we get to do winter strong and summer strong together. This is incredibly incredible things that have been built. Pops, when we see Pops, think about him welding in his garage a better freaking strength cage. And now 45 years later, where we're all at, these are things built. And before people criticize, and whether it's on the social justice thing or all of that, they need to first look inside and ask themselves, what have I built?
I mean, you said that so beautifully, because I believe the same thing. And I try and storytell, or I use quotes as my logic landmarks for people. And like, because I see hypocrites when I see people that are tearing things down and not building things up. And that's so right. I look at it from the sense that there's two ways to have the tallest building in town. You can build yours taller, or you can tear everybody else's down.
Well said.
Be a builder.
Yes.
And then now you start talking, but now you start talking about the mindset of victimization. Yes. And I see that as self-pity when yes. Because this bleeds into identity really quickly, in the sense that like it's we coddle this generation of people, because like I struggle with the kids that say that ADHD, depressed, and like suicide and that kind of thing. We've given them these words and these crutches when we need to give them skills and understanding that you're a human that's going to experience the spectrum. I can experience depression, but I'm not depressed. Like there's a difference. You can be, you can be depressed and laugh. You can be like, it's kind of your joy concept, where you can be you can be happy and still cry. And this whole spectrum of life, we need to give these kids so much utility and tools to combat this, as opposed to giving them excuses for self-pity. Because I see self-pity as, in essence, like just an excuse to me, because I haven't been through some of the hardship that you have, but like you could have fallen on self-pity and never done anything that you ever did. And
I'm with you.
We
have to equip our kids. We have to equip each other. Look, that's why it's interesting. I mean, look at the family of strength. I'll just say that, loosely, with our Swornex people. Look at all of us intuitively knowing we need to come together. And it's not just the steel sharpening steel. It is kingship. It is Knights of the Round Table. Possibly because we have those pillars in place. That we set the table on the 4 pillars. My 4 pillars are, of course, physical discipline, community, Mother Nature, and a purpose.
Let's go.
With those, I can freaking craft a table. We can have dinner on it. We could turn that into a bench. We can bench press. When the storm comes in, we can use it as a shelter. We can do something with that table. When we've all created these tables in our lives, so that intuitively we must come together, because that's what we do it for. It's a very interesting coin, personal power, but personal power is used for the collective. Yet, if all you think about is the collective, you'll never gain your personal power. And if all you do is personal power, then you'll forget what you did it for. It is constant touching back and testing our identity. And it starts in the training.
Yeah,
it starts in the training.
But that's where, if you hold that standard across those 4 buckets you just talked about, like then now you start talking about true balance. And I don't think balance exists, because like life is so chaotic in that realm.
It's combative. Life is combative.
And we pursue it. And that concept of how in the table analogy, like isolation's a problem. I think we like some people don't even want to take their kids to daycare because of the sickness. Like, you know, it's just like things like that where it's like we need as much tribe as possible, but we also need as much, like, again, personal power in that realm where, like, again, stupid quotes and analogies and cliches for me is like you build a longer table, you don't build like higher fences. And
well said. Yeah, brother.
And and that makes more logic to me if everybody at the table is, again, curious. And like, because Bert Soren, who we're talking about, Soren X, has cultivated this just incredible culture of humans, where how he breaks it down at some of the intros is that, like, candid and curious are two of like their pillars, and so that you're giving back, you're giving honest feedback and you're adding value. And like, that's what you want from a tribe. And then, like, rising tide lifts all ships. So yeah, I'm going to raise my personal power so that I can add more value to the table and the culture. And like that philosophy makes sense. And then, like, so I've become conscious of the humans that, again, are at the table, or like, and I try and be at tables that value these four things as well.
Absolutely, brother. And interesting, we think about, I mean, underlying, where are we individually? I mean, I'm not even thinking about society, because, you know, they're on their own trip, but individually, where are we with God and the miracle of life and the cosmic expanse of potential? And where I believe we should ask ourselves these questions every day. And when thinking of God and the miracle and gift that he gave us individually, that is a gift. How can we not want to share that gift with others? But if the God component is not addressed, no wonder we have the hubris, the selfishness, the addiction. Without the God component, the rivers will not overflow with love. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, well, it's super funny just because right before we hopped on the podcast, I was talking to my mom for about 45 minutes, and God and church and everything came up with Christmas going on and all those things. And then it came up that on the podcast, I called God a higher power instead of calling him God and professing my belief in God. When the point I was trying to make on the podcast previously was that everybody should believe in a higher power. And like, we shouldn't in the menu concept of life, we shouldn't judge other religions when, like, again, like, the certainty of religion is what creates friction on earth, and in some sense, because they believe so heavily in this. But besides the point, the God concept, this faith, like, a byproduct of this, again, this direction in life, is in essence like a lack of like making yourself the center of the universe. And because and the most powerful thing you said, because I believe in it as well, because of this combative universe and world we do live in, consistency in revisiting God and your purpose is paramount. Because like, drift to failure, and like, so much of our brain is really just built for movement and survival, as opposed to like conscious effort towards the spiritual, emotional, all these other types of growth. Because really,
we're in a new space as a humanity. We're in a new space. What, in the last 100 years, 200 years ago, only 10% of people were fed. 90% starvation 200 years ago. We're in a new space in which we must be in that contemplative place to receive. We must be. This must be the way.
It literally has to be, because everything in our physiology is built on scarcity, and it's built on survival. And now we're living in a time of abundance, particularly in the United States, where now, like, we need to understand that we're not just fighting like the combative nature of life. We're not fighting our other political side. We're not doing all these things. We're fighting our personal power of being this animal where everything in our physiology says stay on the couch. Because in the past, like, food, water, and shelter were very rare in combination, and our body and everything in our physiology says rest until the next hunt, fight, or fuck. And so in that realm, we need to understand we're not fighting just like laziness, we're fighting the physiology of the animal we are. And so now that's just like a compounding problem, that if people don't have their awareness and their purpose and their gratitude and understanding of that, like choosing the poison, again, sitting on the couch, choosing not to do something is poison. Choosing to do something and suffer and be healthy and do all these things, also hard, also a version of poison. So we need to, again, consciously, pull ourselves into the conscious realm and contemplative realm of modern society today. And yes, I need to revisit my faith constantly. I need to revisit my purpose, or an aim at something with value system, or this drift to failure occurs. What's out of sight is out of mind, and our survival brain will not acknowledge it because it doesn't matter. Like, it's not going to keep me alive, but it's going to, in the contemplative side of consciousness right now, it's going to keep me going in the right direction, mentoring, leading from the front, and changing the world. And like, that's where I think this realm of consciousness is present. Like, and now we have the magic, like this magical fold up box that's sitting in front of me that lets me talk.
Supercomputer, right? Like this one computer sent Americans to the moon. The power of just one of these things, is what did it. Whoa! And now we got them. Now we got supercomputers right here. And yet, it's interesting. Most people are addicted to freaking low vibration entertainment and pornography, as opposed to learning a new phrase in a new language every day. We could be doing that instead. Right.
Where you spend your time is where you see results.
Yes.
And if
go ahead.
No, I just like, I pump this on the podcast all the time. Like, I combat myself every day when I choose to turn on Netflix or things like that. But like, is what you're doing mindful or mindless? Is it is it serving your, again, this growth, purpose-filled, righteous person that's growing and chasing edges? Or are you, again, drifting to failure and slop? And
I'm totally with you, brother. And you know, I'm in entertainment, by the way, and I love films and I love stories, and I'm crazy for it. Michael Mann is my favorite director of all time, and Heat 2 is now in pre-production for a series, and I'm trying to get on it. And I still revisit. Jade and I just watched the new cut of Rocky and Drago, Rocky 4. It's magnificent. I think it's a way. Well, we all need to touch back to our Bible stories and our hero's journey. And that is a way that is spiritually empowering, but to tune out, like you said, into comfort and algorithms that are just making a few people tons of money. It's and that's not the right way. It's go ahead.
No. Oh, that's where it's not the right way. And I don't want you to lose that thought either. But like, that's one area where I have a lot of respect for you. Now, I was going to touch on it earlier, is, again, this consciousness, this, like, again, this mindful approach. And I was trying to get at it earlier with the marathon, because you described running the marathon with no training to me, which again was savage, but you consciously were firing like the right muscles.
Every footfall. Every footfall. And around mile 20, as soon as hips were out of position, because I'm always leaning forward, poise style method from decades of experience and triathlon and everything. When I allowed the fatigue to shift those hips back a millimeter, a cramp happened in the calf. So now I overcommitted a bit, and then the adductors cramp. In milliseconds, bringing myself right into position, and no matter what the fatigue said, I was going to use my will to stay in proper position and on the balls of the feet the whole time. And I was conscious of every foot and every breath. And then I also started to notice when I was doing a bit more arm swing, right around mile 20, because it was cold, it was wet, started to rain, my bicep started to cramp. Right? I'm like, okay, right here, be in the slipstream. And in a way, maybe that's an analogy for living a purpose-driven, not surface-driven life, being in God's grace. He will let you know through emotional or psychological cramping
Yeah.
You're out of the zone. And you mentioned earlier about God and your mom and higher power. It's interesting, brother, because I fought so heavy against Muslims and I saw such horrible things done to humanity through religious extremism, specifically the Muslim religion. I had a real freaking hard time with it after war. However, I was just shooting I have a new television show coming out on History Channel called Military Mysteries. Right after Vietnam, I went right to New York to shoot another 10 days because that's what a man does. A man provides and builds personal power. And that's why I took the job. Jade said, honey, you're going to be exhausted. You should come home. I said, honey, this is the opportunity. And of course, I'm taking it. I'm taking it. So New York is a cesspool, brother. Jade and I went outside the hotel, really nice hotel, $900 a night, right? As we walk outside, some women are coming out of the subway, and they look affluent. Well, we're in a part of Brooklyn that's very affluent. They're obese. One of their boobs is kind of hanging out. They're talking as filthy as men sailors. And they had absolute no respect for themselves. And they're American. And then I walk around the corner and I take Jay to the bodega that we go to get our food cooked and stuff. It's spotlessly clean. We have a Mexican and a Salvadoran that are the chefs behind it, will cook any kind of delicious chow you want 24 hours a day. Egg white omelets, freaking turkey Reuben sandwiches, you freaking name it, brother. And the men that run it, two brothers, Yemeni Italians, came here on a green card, working for their uncle for two other stores, scrapped their money together. They both are married, one's expecting a child. And they are running that thing 24 hours a day. I became so close to these Muslims. They were the most respectful and most God-feeling and God-fearing Americans I met in all of New York City. You see what I mean? It helped heal some of that pain I had, and it helped me open up. And it must have been for a reason. Really amazing. Matter of fact, Jade and I talk about going. So I work in New York now too. We want to go back to the same hotel just so we can be close to the bodega because we want to see our family there. They took care of us for 10 days straight. Just amazing. So we must plant a flag in the sand. We must attack the hill and look for that single focal point. And we'll find when we get there that there's some others that are doing the same, and they may have a different language or or what they call God is a different name, or they have a different nationality or a different color. But we're of the round table together. You get what I mean? It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And that's I've already been taking up too much of your time, so we can wrap it up there just because well, it's just there's so many little examples in that story. One, like these, again, like just because you have nothing doesn't mean you can't be something. Like you can be something from anywhere. And these guys did it, but you also walk by people that chose the opposite, and they chose to be sloppy. They chose to be unconscious and mindless. And so just knowing that freedom, again, that freedom's heavy and suffering's on both ends of that spectrum. But it also, then like your whole story with the Muslim religion is beautiful. So I just think that's like a really cool summarization of like our entire conversation. Then just last quick question, best advice you've ever gotten or best advice you can give?
Take it personal.
Go a little deeper. I want to hear that.
In this weird world, whether especially in business, hey, don't take it personal. It's just business. It's bullshit. Take it personal. Take your limitations and your fears personal so that you can smash through them. Take your failures and your frailties personal so you can address them. Take the opportunity every time you're in a room or on a team or with family, take it personal, because you're giving them, you should give them everything you got in the best way possible, because tomorrow's not guaranteed. Take it personal.
You're an absolute stud, dude. Thank you so much.
Thank you, brother. I love you. B,
Love you
we'll
too,
hang
guys.
and talk to you soon, brother.
Yeah, guaranteed. You're the man.
Thanks, brother. I can't wait to share this. This has been a real good one.
Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning into the podcast. Hopefully you're getting some value or at least some entertainment and juice out of it. If you are enjoying the podcast, please don't hesitate to subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, everything you can find. All the support and interaction is greatly appreciated. Thank you for all the support, and have a day.